everyone. Welcome to, thanks for joining us today. Very excited today to be chatting with the CEO of GeoEdge, Amnon Siev. Amnon, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Matt.
Fantastic. So we have a lot of great questions, a lot of great content to cover today. But before we dive into some of what we had in mind, can you just give the folks tuning in a little bit of an overview of GeoEdge, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So in GeoEdge here, we are all around the user experience. We are basically helping the publisher, app developers, and platform to make sure that the ads that user sees are safe, engaging for the end user. Essentially, we want to make sure that the ad doesn't jeopardize the security of the user, doesn't jeopardize the privacy, and provide our end user, the most engaging experience possible.
Yeah, I think this is a really critical component of an app's user experience that sometimes gets overlooked. Can you speak a little bit on, when I'm opening up an app, I'm playing my favorite game, I'm reading the news on my phone, whatever it may be, and I see some bad ads. From a user perspective, how does that impact how I feel about the app?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that today, when you think about about app, so users are seeing basically the overall experience. It could be a game, it could be the content, it could be the app. They see them as one holistic experience in the app. So although they do have some kind of tolerance for ads, and understand that that's part of the equation, eventually the behavior of the ad is part of the overall experience. If the ad will be too annoying, or even more severe than that, if the ad will actually will lead to the user to a place or to some kind of a risk around their security or jeopardize their privacy, they eventually will see it as part of the overall experience with the app. And there is a good chance that they will stop using the app, will churn the app, or or will provide it a bad rating.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. The ads within the app and the app itself, sometimes it's hard to really distinguish between the two, and many users don't.
Correct. I mean, today when you think about ads, so there are many different formats. So it's not like it was in the old day there was a very distinguished ad format, and you were using the application. It was very clear what is ad and what is content. Today, app developers are trying to create a seamless experience. And essentially, when you are browsing the news article, the app will be an integral part of the content. It's called native app. Alternatively, when you're playing a game, so there is a very, a tight couple between your ability to move and progress in the game and different, ads that are incorporated inside the application.
Yeah. So one thing I'm curious about from an app developer perspective, there's lots of different types of apps out there. We talked about games, news, there's kind of different utility apps like flashlight apps. We could go on and on with the millions of apps out there. Within different categories, how does advertising and advertising in quality impact the experience across maybe some key categories?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So I don't think there is one one threshold here, or one set of expectations that user has from apps. As you mentioned, there is a wide spectrum of apps, and users are already accepted the equation. That some of the utilities that are getting for free or getting part of the game is having an ad. So they have some tolerance to have an ad. On the same time, when a certain threshold is being passed, okay, and the ad will create an experience that eventually is annoying, an experience that that actually prevents you from from enjoying the app. It could be an ad that is very hard to close, or if we are talking about a game, it might be content that is not appropriate to the age group, especially when you're talking about games that kids are involved. So at some point when the app is too aggressive, or alternatively when they don't have a clear policy and boundaries, which kind of ad are willing to run on their app, then they're basically risking that their perception of user will be overall bad, or the experience will be bad. And even worse than that, in some cases we are talking about actually, there are policies, especially for gaming apps that are targeting kids, that if they will violate these policies, they're actually taking, the risk, to have some regulatory risk and so on.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up gaming apps in particular. It's such a big category, a fast-growing category, and it is one that is still very largely, in ad dominated space from a monetization standpoint. For gaming app publishers in particular, what do they need to keep in mind when it comes to ad quality? What kind of ad experiences are going to be okay and allowed, and what kind of ad experiences are users going to be comfortable with within games?
Right. I mean, I think, this answer, we can answer it in different, different levels. First of all, there is a bit a matter of relevance, right? People are expecting to get some kind of relevancy about the ad. So putting aside, a severe or bad user experience, you would expect, that the ads are more or less tailored to what you expect. I mean, if I would see, for example, ads that are targeting, a woman or a completely different age group, that I think creates some alienation from day one. I mean, it means that it's, there isn't not a good match there. When you're specifically talking about games, so of course there is the flow of the game itself, right? Which we mentioned, you don't want it that the flow of the game will be interrupted too much, right? So it's about the timing, it's about where you choose to actually put the ad. Okay, we already cover if the game is being, there is a potential that the game will be played by young audience, and of course you don't want to have any ads that are basically offensive or aggressive in their nature. And the last thing, or the worst thing that can happen, is that the ad actually, kick you out from the game. And back in the day, there was, something called auto redirect, which was a huge issue, which basically means that while you are having some kind of interaction with the game, there is a potential that you'll be kicked out of the game or will move to the App Store. So this, of course, creates, an experience that eventually will prevent you from using the app again, and will result in a churned user. Another thing that I think it's worth mentioning is, of course, the App Store itself. So when we're talking about the App Store, one thing is the ranking. So for gaming, ranking is something, it's important for all the apps, but I think for gaming in particular, the ranking of the game, if user has bad experience, you see that many times due to that actually the feedback that user provide, one of the biggest incentive, or the biggest reason that app developer actually want to fix issue around ad quality. And we mentioned regulation such as COPPA that come from the government, but we also need to think about regulation from the App Store itself. They also have a very strict policy, and essentially, it's true for gaming, it's true for for any app. The App Store see Apple and Google see basically the app owner of the one that's accountable for the quality of ad that's running on the application itself. So when you have bad experience, and when you have bad user feedback, and when you will violate specific regulation, as an app developer, essentially you're taking here very big risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up regulations. In the in-app space right now, one of the biggest changes is Apple's App Tracking Transparency framework, which is going to definitely decrease the number of IDFAs, the individual device identifiers, that'll be available within the iOS ecosystem. From a bad ad blocking experience, how is ATT going to impact what publishers can and can't do to prevent bad ads?
Yeah, so that actually has many implications. Okay. Let me start from something that which might sound a bit counterintuitive. So people are thinking that eventually we're here in order to provide user a better control of their privacy, and essentially Apple took it even a step further and basically say, okay, unless user really provide consent, you cannot track them. what will happen essentially is that means that your ability as an advertiser to actually micro-targeting, very narrow segments, okay, is gone, okay, in a way. And in the space of bad quality or in the space of malvertising, one of the things that we predict that will happen, that actually there is a chance that the amount of malvertising will increase. And the reason is that when you have the ability to do very precise targeting, the CPM prices are going up. Okay, the moment you are taking, IDFA or other way to actually, mark the user, that means that you have a plain level fee for all advertisers, and that means, that the CPM for a certain user might go down. Now, there is a negative correlation, there is a reverse correlation between CPM and malvertising and bad quality. The moment CPMs go down, there is a chance that you will see more bad ad slip in, through the programmatic ecosystem. So that's one aspect. And again, this is, our prediction, and and time will tell. Another aspect is that now, basically, there will be a shift into a certain kind of ad that that will be based on different targeting as we used to. So of course, people are talking about first party data, which will of course would be much more important, and also contextual ad. Contextual ad in the context of quality, it has actually an interesting angle, because if you are, I'm imagining the contextual ads will work in a similar way as it works in web. If, for example, today you are highlighting a certain piece in an article, now when the user click on it, it will lead into a landing page. So now you're talking about quality issues that might happen on the landing page and not in the ad itself. Okay, so that's open, another element into ad quality. And the last thing, basically, what Apple is doing, they're saying, guys, it's not only that you cannot use our internal mechanism in order to identify a user, it's also, we are also putting an X on all other fingerprinting technology. Meaning, okay, maybe the ad itself will have some kind of a JavaScript or some kind of a mechanism in order to create a fingerprint for a certain device, in order to use it in order for targeting, for future targeting. So now, as an app developer, you also have you are also accountable and liable to make sure that all the ads that's running on your app will not actually have any internal fingerprinting mechanism that that will basically violate the new Apple policy. And the question should be asked, how basically the app developer now will have control on that, because again, they don't know which kind of ad are being delivered in the programmatic channel. So we see it in GeoEdge as basically as another facet of ad quality, to making sure that basically the ad will not contain any fingerprinting, okay, and again, providing the app developer the control and ensuring that all these advertisers that trying to do fingerprinting will basically be blocked and will not run on the app.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of really interesting points. I think, everyone in the industry is definitely pro-privacy and pro-consumer choice, but nothing is ever clean cut, it seems. And I think you bring up some really interesting points of some of the things to keep an eye on and what might happen. So one thing I want to go back on, so as you mentioned, ad quality really falls on the publishers, at least as far as a user perception. I want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate. Let's say I'm a publisher, I'm seeing, good monetization. I just keep, my ad revenue is coming in at a steady clip. Maybe I'm getting new users at a good clip. Things are trending in the right direction. Why should I even bother investing in this if kind of my core stats are looking good?
Right. So first of all, you can always, if we're now solely talking about monetization, you can always improve, right? So we have the data that we see behind the scene based on our analysis, okay, that there is opportunity to improve user loyalty by tweaking, the mix of ads that are being shown. So perhaps you have a great content, perhaps you have a great game, okay? Perhaps you are making money from ads and everything is looking okay. There is always opportunity to do a better job than other, okay? I don't know any application that don't have any churn, okay? And I don't know any application that cannot improve their stats, okay? So that's point number one. Point number two regarding monetization. Essentially, we have a saying at GeoEdge that ad quality is a choice, okay? You are in any given moment as an app developer, there is a mix of decision that you can take in any given moment around your monetization. You choose which partner to use. If you're thinking about header bidding, perhaps there are potential a player that you can bring to the mix that you currently do not bring. You might want to create more ad slot, more opportunity on your app, okay, but you're concerned that will cause, to low quality ad to slip in and so on. So how can you create, a calculated risk and play with your mix of, of partners that you're working with? Perhaps it could be around floor price, perhaps it could be an ad slot that we're able to monetize in one condition, but now you can able to monetize it, with some kind of a remnant inventory and so on. But you're concerned that bad ad will slip in. How can you take these calculated risk in a controlled manner? And this is exactly, one of the problems we are solving. The third aspect is user reviews. So you might do great revenue-wise, but again, you have some bad reviews around ads that you can improve. And the last one is about just managing risk, around Apple and around Google and around, the different regulations. So again, it's always, part of it's like insurance, right? Everything might be okay now, but we have so many apps that were kicked in, from different platforms and from different marketplaces due to quality issues. And essentially, you need to think yourself if you're willing, to take this risk or not. Of course, perhaps you know what you're doing, you have very tight control, and so on. So you might be in a good shape. I'm not saying that this is a mandatory service for every app developer, but from our experience, there is always room for improvement, and there is always room to have potential revenue, but having a better visibility and control on what's going on, on the ad that's running on your platform. On your app, sorry.
Yeah. The app stores are so competitive now, and you really, if you let user reviews or user experience slip, I think you'll definitely feel the hurt later on.
You will be surprised, and this is a practice that we run here internally many times, especially as part of our sales process. When you get into apps that that really apps that we all know that have a solid reputation, when you actually search for comment and search for ad and experience, you will be surprised how many comments users leave around bad user experience, okay? And it has the potential here, for having, a very catastrophic, PR risk by having a bad banner is quite high, okay? So it's a big issue, and we see it again and again, across small, big, and premium apps as well.
Yeah. So for app publishers and app developers, what are the various steps that they can do, that they can take to make sure that bad ads aren't going to show up as often within their apps?
Right. So first of all, it's about being aware, right? So it's about listening to your user, okay? Even if you're not using any technology or service in order to address this issue, your user eventually your biggest asset. And if you have problem in this area, you will find it from user feedback. You will find it, as we mentioned, in comment in the App Store. You can just if you use your own app, and you will be able to see these bad ads slipping in. So that's best practice that I recommend for any app developer. Listen to your user, and even if you don't want to actually take proactive action to do that, and make sure that you have some visibility to which kind of ad are actually running on your app. That's the basic pillar. The second one is choose the partner that you're working around monetization. Okay, they are not shortcuts. I mean, I think we all know which platforms doing better job than other. Okay, and sometimes there are revenue opportunities, and you should be essentially it's a decision. Okay, am I willing to work with a tier 2 or tier 3 platform, which I know that might work with some shady advertiser, in order to make some more dollars. It's a decision. Maybe it does, go align with your business goal, but know exactly who's your target audience, know what is your strategy. And if you have a long-term strategy in order to build an audience, then cherry pick your partners. Have processes in place, okay? Because even the best platform, bad ad slips in, okay? So when there is a value evaluation, make sure that you have the process and you have the personnel in order to actually work with your partner to mitigate the problem, okay? Essentially, if you are really committed to work around quality, and if you have a clear policy, and you'll be willing, even to give up some short-term revenue opportunity in order, to make sure that you are clean, this policy will pay off in the long term. And I can tell you for sure that when we work with publisher and app developer, the ones that are committed to the process and have a clear guidelines, they are the one that eventually become clean, okay? That it's a long-term commitment. It's not like a shortcut. And of course, the last pillar, is services like GeoEdge, and other companies that essentially provide you the control, the visibility, and basically the tool to block, low-quality ads in real time and protect your user. So that, of course, the last or maybe the first line of defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and I'm glad you brought up the role that kind of upstream players and different, folks within the programmatic supply chain play. While users may ultimately, place the blame on the app itself, obviously the exchanges, the ad networks, the SSPs, the DSPs, they play a role as well. And I think it's important for publishers to understand, how the ad showed up in the first place, in addition to kind of proactive steps, and of course, using services like GeoEdge.
Exactly.
So we talked a little bit about ATT and some of the upcoming changes. I think ultimately, if there's money to be made, fraudsters are going to find a way to exploit it. Even with sort of the best and most robust technologies going forward, how do you see bad actors trying to infiltrate, and what can companies like InMobi or GeoEdge or app publishers themselves do to make sure that they remain clean and avoid these issues?
Yeah, so I think, one of the biggest trends that we are seeing is that the threats are now basically shifting from the ad itself to the offer, okay? So essentially, the bad actors are looking for a way to make revenue, okay? And behind any attack, behind any low quality, behind any advertising, there is some kind of a business case and an ROI plan in order to do that. And what they basically figure out, that you can lure the user with some kind of an ad that might look okay, but essentially when you get to the landing page of the ad, okay, you will find yourself in some kind of a deceptive or some kind of a landing page that will basically perform the final stage of the attack. So we are seeing, especially in the last year, a big trend and a big shift toward what we call basically post-click attack, and that's another frontier, in ad quality, and how we, as an quality provider, an ad company like InMobi need to basically evolve and check in a very systematic manner the different offers that are leading, and that also bring another challenges. There is a whole issue of clocking, which basically bad actors are using a mechanism to basically direct different users to different landing page. And many things, what you see that the campaign is being launched, the creative looks okay, the landing page looks okay, and a few days after the campaign goes live, some user, due to a clocking mechanism, will be steered into a malicious landing page. So again, like any cybersecurity, attack, these are evolving. The bad guys are becoming more and more sophisticated, and we always need to make sure that we are one step ahead.
Yeah, and it's all about everyone being diligent, and it's definitely front of mind for us and for our publisher partners. Fantastic. Well, Amnon, thanks for taking the time to chat today. This has been really insightful and enlightening. So thank you for taking the time. This has been great.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. Great conversation.